Now up to this point, we've learned how to create our superelevation and assign it to our corridor. I want to explore another method that's available to you to automate the superelevation process and streamline it, make it a little bit more efficient. And this is called the automated superelevation method. And with this method, you first create your superelevation in the same file as your corridor, rather than being in a separate file. And then when you create the superelevation sections, you create the corridor instead of the alignment. And then what happens is with this tool, it's going to automatically build the super sections, the lanes, it's going to calculate the super, and it's going to create the corridor and the point controls all in with a few clicks of the mouse. So in this example, we're going to take a look at creating the superelevation for ramp C. Now, ramp C comes off of our main line here and ties in to our side road. So we're going to take a look at using the all-in-one method to create our superelevation transitions and assign the transitions to the corridor. So I'm going to go into my corridor file for ramp C. So I'm going to go up to File, Open. We're going to open up the ramp C corridor. So the corridor is already created, and since we're working with a ramp, ramps typically have multiple design speeds. So we have two curves on this ramp. We have one here in the beginning, we have one here near the end. This first curve has a design speed of 45 miles an hour. The second curve here has a design speed of 35 miles an hour. So we need to address that when we do our superelevation calculations. So the first thing we're going to do is modify and make some changes to our superelevation rules file. We're going to make some changes to our superelevation rules file before we begin. So I'm going to go up to our superelevation rules file. So I'm going to go to Edit Superelevation Rule File. It's going to bring up the dialog. I want to make sure you have your AASHTO 2011 Imperial XML file open. So I want to open that up. And then if you'll notice on the General tab here, if you come over to the Calculate Superelevation Default Settings, we're going to set our Emax for 6%. We're going to set our runoff length to AASHTO. We're going to use our pivot method. We want to set this for right edge because we need the pavement to rotate about the right edge here. And we also want to set the default design speed for this particular ramp to be 45 miles an hour. Okay, so we're going to use these as our standard settings for now. And then we're going to save this, and then we're going to close the dialog and click yes. So we have our settings set up to create our superelevation for this ramp. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to create superelevations. We're going to go create superelevation sections. So I'm going to select this. So select create superelevation sections, and it's going to prompt us for a name. So we're just going to follow the heads up prompt. And for this name, I'm just going to key in ramp C. So key in ramp C. And then you want to make sure you set your superelevation feature definition and give it a name. Also, we're going to set the minimum tangent length to 0 because we want to create multiple superelevation sections since we're going to end up with multiple design speeds for this particular ramp. So you want to make sure you enter 0 for the minimum tangent length. So I'm just going to click through the heads up prompts now. It's going to prompt me to locate a corridor or an alignment. So I'm going to locate my corridor. So I'm going to come over here and grab my corridor handle. Then it's going to prompt me for my AASHTO design standard file or my rules file. So you can see I already have the rules file loaded up here. So I'm going to press Alt down arrow and go select the one that I've just modified. And we're going to click Open to open up the proper XML file. And we're going to left click to accept that. Once again, it's going to prompt us to enter the minimum tangent length between curves. And again, we want to enter 0 this time because we want multiple superelevation sections to be created since we're going to be dealing with multiple design speeds here for these curves on the ramp. So I'm going to left click to accept that. And then it's going to go through and do some processing. And what's going to happen is it's going to go through, it's going to create our superelevation sections. It's going to create our superelevation lanes. It's also going to calculate the superelevation, and it's also going to assign it to the corridor and create the point controls. So if you notice in my cross-sectional view now, I have a point control created over here on my left edge of pavement on my ramp. And if I scroll through my cross sections, they're now going to be super elevating according to the calculations and the lanes that were created in the plan view. Okay, now if we go and review the information in our plan view, you'll see that we have two distinct super elevation sections that were created for each curve, and the super elevation lanes are also created inside of the plan view DGN. So the super elevation is actually getting created inside the actual corridor file. Okay, so there's a difference here as opposed to what we were doing previously. Previously, we were calculating super elevation in a separate DGN file, and then we were referencing it in. With this method, it actually creates all the super inside of our corridor, and it also assigns the lanes and the calculations to our corridor automatically. We didn't have to do any extra steps to make that happen. We just chose one tool and we automated the process. Now, since we have multiple design speeds and we chose our default design speed as 45 miles an hour, right now the super calcs for the first curve are based on 45 miles an hour, but the super calcs for the second curve are still based on 45 miles an hour, but we need to change that because this design speed is supposed to be 35. So to change the supercalcs and update the supercalcs for the second curve here, for the 35 mile an hour design speed, select the super section and then go into the design speed here in the properties and change that to 35. And then when you do that, those calculations will be adjusted and updated accordingly so that you get the proper super elevation transitions for that particular design speed. Okay, so once we have our super elevation all updated, it's usually a good idea to review the super elevation calculations with our super elevation report. So I'm going to go over to my report tool. I'm going to go up to my super elevation panel and click on super elevation report. I'm going to locate my first super elevation section and then my second super elevation section. I'm going to right click to complete, and that's going to bring up my super elevation report and give us the super elevation transition information for both of our curves along our ramp. So you can see here we have a design speed of 45 miles an hour for our first curve, and all the super elevation information is reported there. And then if you look at the second curve, you'll see our design speed is 35 miles an hour for this second set of super elevation calculations. So always a good idea to use the report and make sure the super elevation is being created properly.